Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to my annual seminar on property tax assessment appeals. For the last 30 years, I've helped commercial and industrial property owners appeal their property tax assessments in Maryland. It's a great pleasure to be able to give this special seminar to my GHI members. I've represented GHI in the past for a number of years, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you again. Again, my name's Bill Monks. For the last 30 years, I've helped property owners appeal their property tax assessments in Maryland. I'm a former tax assessor in Maryland, and this is basically the crux of my practice. Um, so we're going to have a little bit of a soft start and give people a little time to join on here. So we'll talk about great quotes in this presentation stolen from pop culture. Really, there's two of them here. The first one is these jobs are going, boys, and they ain't coming back. If you can answer who that line is from, you will know that it is a famous song from Bruce Springsteen. And what it really gets to is technology and how the world has changed and how that impacts real estate. Because frankly, we've had a incredible change in the real estate environment over the last few years. The squeeze in housing is a credible example of that and what's happened in the housing markets. The other quote I have, I'm going to skip the middle quote. Johnny's in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on the pavement thinking about the government. And that gets to a not insignificant impact of both inflation and interest rates on the value of real estate. And the author of that quote now has a biopic out with Timothy Chalamet, if you're familiar with pop culture. So, of course, that's Bob Dylan. So let's go back and let's talk about what we're going to cover on this seminar. Um, your right to appeal in Maryland, property values, tax bills, and assessments, increased interest rates and property values, information the assessor must disclose, growth limitations, environmental constraints, and value. What's your best strategy? Approaches to value, cost, income, and market. COVID-19 and value, really just a change in the world a little bit. The new economy, and how a lawyer can help in a property tax appeal. If you leave this seminar with no other useful piece of information, the deadline to file an appeal is February 13th, 2025. So if you want to appeal the property tax assessment on your co-op property, you have to get that appeal filed before February 13th, 2025. I also wanted to indicate that, before I get too far along, that there's a question and answer function here on this Zoom webinar package. So if you have any questions as we go along, just jot them down and send them to me using the Q&A function, and I will try and answer them probably at the end of the presentation. I'm going to skip through because this seminar is to some degree focused on other parties. So I'm just going to skip through some of these things. But obviously, something that's impacting real estate out there is climate change. And of course, we're seeing that in the terrible California fires and what that's going to do to insurance costs. But let's jump on to know the property, know the market, know the process. And that's what I'm going to really touch on today. Why are you here? Property taxes, in many cases, are the greatest property expense after debt service, okay? So after you pay your mortgage, in many instances, the greatest operating expense you have is property taxes. So you can't reduce your mortgage unless you refinance, but what you can do is you can take the opportunity to challenge your property tax assessment to make sure it's accurate. The top points, the high points here that I'm going to cover, just so you'll have a feel. You have the ability to appeal your property tax assessment every year in Maryland. Because you just recently received new assessment notice, you have the deadline to file the appeal of February 13th, 2025. That's an in-cycle appeal. In Maryland, we have a 3-year assessment cycle. That means once every 3 years, your property is reassessed. Any increase in assessment is phased in equal increments of 1/3 over that 3-year period. And I'm going to walk through that whole process so you'll have a feel for that. The date of finality, when was your property valued? Your property was to have been valued as of January 1st, 2025. That's something known as the biannual date of finality, but you really only remember it as the day they valued my property. That's the tax day. When you're arguing what the value of your property is, it's going to be as it relates to January 1st, 2025. What your assessment is supposed to be is the market value, what a willing purchaser would pay a willing seller in all conditions requisite to a fair sale. It's supposed to be what you would sell your property for and what I would buy your property for on January 1st, 2025. What's the market? What would it be worth? There's some information that you're entitled to get from the assessor, and I'll touch on that a little bit too. The assessor must disclose how the property was valued. So he's got to tell you whether he used the cost approach or whether he used the sales approach. On residential properties in Maryland, they don't use the income approach. So really, it's the cost and the sales approach. The assessor must provide you a calculation worksheet. So you are entitled under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights to get the calculations that were utilized in valuing your property. And I'll go over the worksheet in a little bit detail too. The assessor must also provide a list of comparables that are similar sales to your property and what they sold for. It's kind of a function of comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. If you're in and now you're calling on my co-op memory here, a 2-bedroom frame, theoretically, you should only be valued like similar 2-bedroom frames. You shouldn't be valued like larger units if there are larger units, et cetera. So that really is, but the state must provide you with a list of those comparables. I'd also indicate, I talked to Mr. Perry before today's presentation, and Joe says that the co-op has a list of the sales of co-op properties in there. So you can turn to the co-op to get a list of sales. And then I'm sure they're probably broken down by unit type and style. And that's how you'll want to compare that comparable sale for yours. You also have a right, if you take it up to the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board, and I'll run through the 3 levels of appeal in Maryland, or the multi-levels of appeal in Maryland, but I'll run through just the first 3 basics. At the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board, the state has a duty to give you his sale 30 days in advance. So you get those sales in advance. This is a critical component of a property tax appeal, this next bullet. Under Maryland law, your assessment is presumed valid. The property owner carries the burden of proof in every property tax assessment appeal at every level. The state really can stand silent, has to give no information, and their assessment is presumed valid under Maryland law. So you've got to carry the burden of proof. You've got to bring in the sales. You've got to bring in the data and other information on your property to get an assessment reduction. You know, it's the opposite of the burden of proof in a criminal matter. In America, if you're charged with a crime, the government carries the burden of proof. As a matter of fact, in almost every other situation, the government has to prove that you've done something wrong. Not in a property tax appeal. In a property tax appeal, it's assumed that you're guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. So it's just, you have to know that. If you go in and you complain that the inflation is too high or something along those lines, that's really not going to sway the assessor. And that's really not the substantive data that you need to get the assessment reduced. And you won't get it reduced. I mean, you've got to bring in the facts and data. So you carry the burden of proof. It's my view out there that in many instances, and there's a lot of risk in real estate. Anybody who's owned real estate over the years knows there's risk. And I always feel that that's under valued in assessment appeals. Research. That's it. You carry the burden of proof. Uh, you got to talk to the co-op about what sales they have. You have to ask the state for what sales they have. They should be the same. You have to take a good hard look at your property. Do you have any physical or structural conditions of your property that perchance the assessor wouldn't be aware of? Do you have wet basement? Or I mean, I don't know whether there are many basements out in the co-op, but do you have, is there something physical? Do you have structural cracks in the property? Something like that, that if you were going to sell the property to me, I would take into account in what I paid for it. Three approaches to value in Maryland, the cost, the income, and the market approach. We're really basically going to talk about the cost and the market. The income approach isn't used on residential properties in Maryland, but the cost approach is that something's worth what it costs to build plus the ground that it's under. And that's always a little questionable with the co-op, because the co-op really doesn't have individual subdivided lots. It's a cooperative. Everybody owns all the land underneath. So it's a little bit of a different animal there, but it really goes by what the sales of units are. So the market approach is, again, what similar or comparable properties sell for. And you're gonna want to do your research on that. You also might want to talk to some realtors in the area to see what they think's happening in the co-op market, just to get a feel for what the sales are and what the realtors think. Supervisor versus Lane. This is a decision out of the Maryland Supreme Court. Just recently changed its name, but it's now known as the Maryland Supreme Court. Supervisor versus Lane allows property owners and the state to use sales after the date of finality. You used to not be able to use sales after January 1st. Like in your appeal, you wouldn't be able to use sales after January 1st, 2025. But the Maryland Supreme Court said, nope. If the assessor, and this is how the case got to the Maryland Supreme Court, the assessor said we should be able to use sales after January 1st. And the Supreme Court said, we're not going to second guess the assessor. If the assessor thinks that they should be able to use sales after January 1st, we're going to allow them to use sales after January 1st. And that really secretly opened the doors for everybody to use sales after January 1st. Because if the state can use sales after January 1st, you can use sales after January 1st. The question many times people ask is, how long do I go after January 1st? Well, that's a lawyer's question, because I think what the court said is you can use any date after January 1st up till the date of your hearing. The state takes a more restricted view. They think 4 to 5 months after the date of finality. But I don't see that language in the law. So I always, if I find a sale that will help me after the date of finality, I use it. And then when the state tries to object, I point out that they brought the case to the Maryland Supreme Court authorizing sales after the date of finality. I talk a little bit about, here's one thing I will say. You pay your taxes every year. So that's not going to change. You're going to pay your taxes on September 30th, 2025. I'm not sure when the co-op cuts the check to the county, but around that time, your taxes will be paid. You're going to pay them this year. You're going to pay them next year. You're going to pay them the year after that. So, it's one thing that you want to make sure you're paying the proper amount. You want to make sure that you're paying on the market value of your property and not more. So, I think it can be worth your while in many instances to file a property tax appeal. This is a terrible and horrible demonstrative, but I use it. It is just a copy of a property tax inquiry. If you go on the website, the Prince George's County Office of Finance website, this will tell you what your property tax is in Maryland. Now, this is a commercial property. It's not a residential property. But if you look over to the right, they have the assessment on this property. If you look closely in the right-hand column, 4 numbers down, $16 million. Okay, so the assessment on this property is $16 million. If you look over on the right, if you look over on the left-hand column, you'll see all the jurisdictions. So if you're in Prince George's County, you're paying a tax to the county. You're paying a tax to the Park and Planning Commission. You're paying a tax to the state of Maryland. You're paying a tax to the Washington Chesapeake Bay Water Quality and the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. And because you're also in Greenbelt, you pay a city tax, okay? So you're paying taxes to all these entities via your property tax bill. These are all property taxes. Now, I can't change the tax rates. The rates are set by the city of Greenbelt, by the county. The county rate is about $1 on the 100. Park and Planning has another rate. There's a state of Maryland property tax, about 11 cents on the 100. When you add them all up together, they're about $1.48 if you're not if you're in an unincorporated area outside of a municipality. They're at about $1.48. Now, I'm not sure what the Greenbelt tax is because the Greenbelt tax is really on top of that $1.48. I think it's about 50 cents on the 100, but it's been a long time since I looked at it, so don't hold me to that. But that pushes your tax rate up to about $1.80 or $1.90. So almost 2%, if I'm not mistaken. And I may be off on that. You also get some benefit from the tax differential, but I'm not gonna go into that. So what you've got is tax rates set by the local jurisdictions. If you reduce the assessment, it's a simple math equation. You're multiplying two numbers together. You're multiplying the assessment times the tax rate for the local jurisdiction, for the county, for Park and Planning, for whoever else. You multiply those two together, you come up with the total tax bill that you owe. It's a simple math equation. If I can lower one of those numbers, I can lower the amount you pay in taxes. Now that gets to, can't lower the tax rates. Those are set by the politicians. What we can do is we can lower the assessment, and hence that'll lower your tax bill. Now, again, this is, and you should all be in possession of something that looks like this. This is a new notice of assessment. They just went through last year and redid it. So I'm going to help you read it a little bit so that it looks a bit like hieroglyphics, but it's understandable. So what we have is here, if you're looking at this, the number in box 3. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but the number in box 3 is your old assessment, okay? So that was the assessment you paid taxes on in 2024, all right? Now, they sent you a new reassessment notice in December 24, and that will be for September or July 1 of 25. If you scoot over here to box 9, that is your new assessment. That is the reassessed value of your property for January 1st, 2025. In this example, if you go to box 6, you'll see that they've increased the value by 10% or $200,000, okay? But there's a triennial assessment process. That means that $200,000 increase is not going to go into effect all at one time. That is going to be phased in equal increments over 3 years. Okay, so let's go down to the next set of boxes, and that is your assessment phase-in. For 2025, you will pay, you will have an assessment. I want to be clear on this. You will have an assessment of $2,066,666. For 2026, you will have an assessment of $2,133,000. And for 2027, you will have an assessment of $2.2 million. All right, so I normally don't deal with the taxable portion of the assessment. That's in the next set of boxes. This is really set up for commercial property. In the next set of boxes, they tell you the amount you'll actually pay taxes on. In Maryland, we have what's known as the homestead tax credit. That is, if you own or occupy your home, there is actual limit on how much your property taxes can go up. So if you look here, the county and Baltimore City, and I hope you have your assessment notice with you. If you have your assessment notice with you, refer to that box because that's the box that you actually pay taxes on. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So in Maryland, your assessment can only increase for tax purposes, and that's the taxable portion of your assessment, if you get the homestead tax credit, is 3%. Okay, so while you may see an astronomical increase in your assessment, you have a built-in protection of the homestead tax credit of 3% on your county tax. Okay, on your state tax, the credit is 10% increase. And on the city of Greenbelt, I looked this up last night. I don't think there's any cap on the city of Greenbelt tax. It said 0 on the form. So I don't think there's any, and like I say, the city of Greenbelt tax would be like 40 cents or 50 cents on 100. So in effect, what I want to tell you is everyone is super concerned with the number in box 9. That's 2.2 million, okay? But what you really want to do is you want to go down to the taxable portion of your assessment, because uh, for the county, it can only increase by 3%. So that number should be lower than the number that you have above that for 2025, because really they were just to take the 2024 number and index it by 3%. Okay. Now, for the state and the city, for the state tax, they increased the 2004 number by 10%. And the city of Greenbelt, I believe, is unregulated. So you're paying just on the any value that the city of Greenbelt levies. So in effect, that is how the assessment process works in Maryland. You have a 3-year assessment cycle. They phase in the assessment increases in equal increments over the next 3 years, 2025, 2026, and 2027. But there's a kicker. If you owner occupy your property, the homestead tax credit limits the county increase to 3%, limits the state increase to 10%, and that's 3% of the 2024 assessment and 10% of the 2024 assessment for state taxes. And I don't think there's any limit on the city of Greenbelt tax. So it's a little tricky there, but the number you really want to focus on is the number where it says taxable portion of your assessment for July 1st, 2025, because that shows you what limits the homestead tax credit and the state tax credit give you. And I'm like I say, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if there's a municipal tax cap. If there is, you'll find that in that third box. I just looked down there. The first box is County, Baltimore City. The second box is taxable state. The third box will be municipal. So if there's anything in that municipal box, that will be the indicate you'll pay taxes on that amount, okay? So don't get bogged down in the number in box 9. Just know that these taxable portions through the homestead tax credit go to protect you. Okay, this is just a simple analysis of how your taxes are calculated. For here, I used a value of $2 million with an assessment increase to 2.2 million or 200,000. It steps up each year. Now, this property had no homestead tax credit protections. It's a commercial property. Commercial properties don't get homestead tax credit protections. So you'll see the tax rate I kept static at $1.38 on the 100, and the tax bill just walks up, and walks up. So if you don't file an appeal on an unincorporated area on a commercial property, you'll see your taxes just generally go up a third, and a third over the 3-year period. And again, that's your assessment stepping up. And again, that's your tax bill stepping up over the 3 years. All right, let me talk to you a little bit about what and how. Okay. I'm going to skip through here and we'll go. So this is generally the plan. Okay. If there's a plan, this is the plan. First of all, we file by February 13th. Okay, that's the most critical component of this. Get yourself filed. It's just a paper filing. You don't have to submit any data, facts, proof, substantive evidence by February 13th. You just have to file the directions on your assessment notice as to how to file an appeal. That's all you have to do. The state will then at a later time set up a hearing or you'll do a written appeal. But February 13th is just a notice filing in effect, a paper filing. You're just saying, hey, listen, I want to challenge my property tax appeal. We're going to look at the data the state has on your property. We're going to get a copy of the worksheet. We're going to get a copy of the sales analysis. We're going to try and figure out if there's anything that makes your unit different. Do you have foundation problems? Do you have leaks? Are there substantive physical problems in your property that the assessor might not be aware of? Do you have a poor location? Are you right on the main street or something like that, something that might detract from value? You want to bring that in. So you want to do your research because you carry the burden of proof. You want to talk to the local realtor. You want to talk to, you want to get the sales from the co-op. You want to get the sales from the county. You want to do some leg research when you get those sales. Walk around, see, is that property really comparable to yours? They're saying that this unit on this street that's the same style as mine sold for X. Well, drive over, take a look at it. I mean, you can't go in it, but take a look at it. See, was this recently renovated? Does anybody know if this was recently renovated? It's got a new kitchen, got new bathrooms. Obviously, have they put an addition on? All these things you want to make sure you want to do your research. So you find out the data that the state has, you get your worksheet, you get the sales, you do your own independent legwork and research, think about it. Then you want to meet with or discuss with the assessor. You're probably going to do that electronically these days, where you email your information and then talk to them over the phone about the property. I'd like to emphasize that the tax assessors are just government employees, just regular people. They don't get any extra money if your assessment is high. They get their salary. What they're relying on you to bring to them is facts and data that they might not have been aware of. And if you do that, you may have a chance at a value reduction if it's warranted. But I would also say that you catch more, I don't know what they say about bees and honey, but you catch more bees with honey. That's all I'll say when you're doing an appeal. You're going to want to do your appeal. You're going to want to then make a determination as to whether you're satisfied with that reduction or not. If you don't, and if you don't get a reduction, and then you want to make a decision as to do you want to take it up to the Property Tax Appeals Board, which is the second level of appeal, or do you want it to, or after that, take it up to the Maryland Tax Court. So I'll walk through those a little bit. These are the three appeal steps in Maryland. Your first step is the assessor. You vest that appeal by filing your appeal by February 13th, 2025. Relatively informal hearing. You're just going to discuss the facts and issues and data with the assessor. You're not going to complain about how unjust the American democratic system is or anything along those lines. You're just going to discuss what the value of your property is and why you think that. You're also going to ask him how he determined the value of your property, what facts and data he used to reach that valuation. So you'll have a hearing with him. He'll send you a notice. Normally, you'll get that notice by April or May. They like to send these notices out before the tax bills go out on July 1st. So if you're lucky, you'll get that notice before July 1, before your new tax bill is issued, if you're successful. If you're dissatisfied with the decision of the assessor, you have 30 days from the decision of the assessor to appeal it up to the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board. Now, that's a 3-member board, sits in each county. Each county has its own board. So, and you have another opportunity to challenge the value of your property, to discuss before what I think is a more independent entity, what you think the correct valuation of your property should be. They normally, and again, on a residential property, the state has to give you their sales or comparables 30 days prior to the appeals board hearing, and they are more independent. So you use the facts and the data that you've gathered and meet and discuss with them. If you're dissatisfied with the decision of the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board, you can take it up to the Maryland Tax Court. You have 30 days from the decision of the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board to file up to the Maryland Tax Court. That's a bit more formal. There's a tax court judge up in Baltimore. Sometimes they sit out in the surrounding jurisdictions, but sometimes you have to go to Baltimore. And again, it is a more formal proceeding, but frankly, the rules of evidence are rather lax in a property tax appeal. Really, the main rule of evidence that applies in a tax appeal is relevance. You've got to talk about relevant real estate data. That's what's important. What condition your property is in, what the sales in your neighborhood look like, any other factors surrounding value. And again, time to appeal, 30 days from the date of final notice from the assessor, or 30 days from the date of the PTAB order, and that'll get you up to Maryland Tax Court. Now, if you can find a error in fact or law by a decision of the Maryland Tax Court, you can take it to the circuit court in the county that you live in. So if you think that the tax court judge made a mistake on the law, or made a mistake with regard to a factual finding, you can take it up to the circuit court. Now, you make your record in the tax court, so you've got to go to the tax court and lay out your record, and then the circuit court acts as, in effect, an appellate court. So you make an argument in front of the circuit court right here in Upper Marlboro. And then if you are dissatisfied with the decision of the circuit court, you can appeal to the Maryland Court of Special Appeals if you can find a factual error or error in the law. And if you're dissatisfied with that decision, you can take it up to the Maryland Supreme Court, believe it or not, if you find an error in the Court of Appeals decision. And finally, believe it or not, if you can find a constitutional matter, you could appeal this case all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, I don't think we're going there on these cases. Really, what you want to focus on is you want to focus on the assessor level. You want to focus on the Property Tax Appeals Board. And you really want to focus on doing your research and getting the data together so that you have an opportunity for an appeal. You must do your own independent research. You carry the burden of proof. 3 approaches to value: cost approach, the income approach, and the market approach. Cost approach is something is worth what it costs to build, plus the ground it's on, less depreciation. Depreciation is always a difficult thing to calculate. I'm not going to talk on the income approach. That's really just used for commercial properties. The market approach, something is worth what similar or comparable properties sell for. So really, frankly, what you want to do is get a list of, if you're in a 1-bedroom, frame or a 1-bedroom brick. You see, I do have some memory of the co-op's specifications. If you're in a 1-bedroom brick, you want to make sure that you are compared only to 1-bedroom bricks. And then you want to make sure you're compared to 1-bedroom bricks that are in similar condition as yours. You know, one of the good things about the internet is now people post all these pictures when they sell their houses, when they sell co-op units. So you get to see that, you know, that 1-bedroom brick had a new bathroom, had new appliances, had new kitchen, you know, all the things that upgrade a property. And so you want to sit down with the assessor and say, listen, you know, I've got a kitchen built in 1960. Nobody's going to pay X for my property just because they paid X for Smith's property. So that's what you do. Property Owners Bill of Rights. Here we go. This is fantastic. You are entitled to numerous pieces of information, most basically to understand the process. You, like I say, you have a right to your worksheet. You have a right to sales. Listen to this. You'll love this. You can get copies of your neighbor's worksheets. Yes, yes. If you think your neighbor's unit is comparable to yours and it's sold and you want to use it as a comparable, I don't know whether the charge is $2 or $1 per copy, but they will send you the worksheets on all the comparables you want. So that property that's sold for X amount, you can get the worksheet on that. You send this, you know, send the state a letter saying, or a notice saying, you know, 6B Southway, 6B South. I'm going to use 6B Southway as a comp in my appeal. I want to see the worksheet on it. State will send you the worksheet on it. You know, so you can actually discover some of the information about 6B Southway that's sold, though you can't go inside it. And if you look at the notes on it, and the other place I'd go is I'd go to the real estate listing on it. I'd go to see what's on the internet on that property. If it just sold, you'll always find a plethora of information about the condition of the property, what improvements was made, et cetera, et cetera. So you're doing your own research. This Property Owners Bill of Rights, codified into Maryland law, gives you the whole outline of a bunch of things that you're entitled to. You're entitled to an explanation. If you get a reduction, you're entitled to the factors in that reduction to be taken into account in your next tax appeal. So it's good. It's good. And I'll tell you what, I'll talk to Joe, Mr. Perry, after the presentation, and I'll send him a copy of this, and maybe he can distribute it to those who attended the seminar. It might prove helpful, and I'll also send him a copy of my top points. So you'll just have a little synopsis there. Okay. Your worksheet. I go on and on about your worksheet. This is what the government will send you. Okay. You look at it and you say, what? Yes, exactly. But here, over here to the right, they give you some information on the property, its size, its building type. Now, this is a small warehouse, I think 3,500 square foot warehouse. They tell you what condition it's in. They give you the zoning up here in the top. If you look at the top, it give you the total enclosed area there. So it's just basic data on your property. But I have to tell you, check it. You know, it's not unwarranted that they have mismeasured your property for the last 30 years. And really, what's more accurate is the data has gone from property from system to system to system, and that there may have been some error in transferring data is always possible. So, you know, and then so they give you a little data on in section 2 on the building. Section 3, they use indexes to figure out what it costs to build the property. This is a cost approach to value worksheet. I'm sorry, I should have specified that. It's a cost approach to value worksheet. And so they index the construction costs by a variety of different things, and also an index for the community. So you'll see that this has a number of index multipliers. So they get down to a building value of 244,000 on this property. If you're following along here a little bit on the right-hand column, you come down in part 3 to 244,000. 4, they charge you for extras if there's an extra in it, if you had a spare room, or I can't kind of think of what an extra the co-op would have, but if you had an extra in the co-op, I can't think, but if there was an extra there, they would charge you there. Then they depreciate it. They made a significant depreciation on this property, must be rather old. They depreciate it, and they come up with a building value, which is in line 6. Line 6, it's building value. And then they add accessory structures if you've got a addition or something along those lines. They'll put that in there. The best example of an accessory structure is a pool. I think anybody in the co-op has an in-ground pool, or a 3-car garage or something like that. But you know, you're not going to see that. So you come up with total improvement value in column 8 of 125,000. Then they add in the value of the land. So on this one, they added in the value of the land, 122,000, and they come up with a total value of 247,500. So that is your cost approach. You want to check to make sure they have the data on your property correct. You want to take a look at the depreciation. You want to make sure that this information is appropriate for the valuation of your property. This is just something I use in my presentation. It shows wetlands, and obviously you can't be taxed on wetlands. So you can't develop wetlands, so you shouldn't be taxed on wetlands. So if you have a large piece of property, you want to make sure that the state understands the wetlands that are on them, so you're not taxed on it. Sales analysis. This is the sales analysis of, I'm using a warehouse example here, but it's the same thing with the co-op. The state will give you the property address, the state will give you the zoning, the state will give you the year built, they'll give you the size of it, the enclosed area of the building, then the area of the land, they'll give you the sale date, and they'll give you the sales price. So you can figure, and they'll also give you the account number. If you want to use it as a comp, and you want to get a copy of that worksheet, you can give them this account number, send them $2, and I'm not quite sure what the charge is. It used to be $1. It may be $2, maybe $2.50, but that's the charge for a worksheet. And state will send it to you. And the state will send you, when you file the appeal, the state should send you your own worksheet and your own sales analysis for free. Okay? So you should get your own worksheet and your own sales analysis on your home for free. It's just a warehouse. That doesn't apply. Skipping through here. I'll slip back here. Uh, if there are things in your walls or other problems with your property that uh, uh, the state wouldn't be aware of, and this has that piping that had the pinpoint pricks in it that leaked, older building, older construction. You got to make the state aware of that. State's not going into your house. They're looking from the front and they're looking for what they sell for, and they're making a determination there. So if you've got something physical on your property, structural crack, something like that, and in this day and age, take a picture of it, email it to the assessor. Say, hey, listen, we got this giant crack. We think that would impact our value. Something along those lines. All right. Oh, this is a good point. Appeal of property taxes does not state your responsibility to pay your property taxes. Your property taxes are due. Your bill is issued on July 1st, and I know you pay the co-op, and the co-op pays by September 30th. But there is no staying of paying your property taxes, even if you're under appeal. Okay, if you're under appeal, you still have to pay your property taxes. And then if you're successful, you get a refund of overpaid property taxes. What we got here. I would like to take this time to thank you for coming, showing interest in your appealing your property tax assessment. At this time, I will answer any questions that you have. Now, we have a Q&A function here, and I will do my best to master this technology and utilize those. Okay, hold on a second here. See if I can find it. All right, the magic. All right. Someone asked, is the deadline February 13th for the state of Maryland to receive the application for the documents to be posted? Got to be mailed by. Got to either use the electronic process they point out on the assessment notice or postmarked by February 13th. A February 14th postmark won't get the appeal. A February 13th postmark will get the appeal. If I'm doing it electronically, I like to do it before 5 o'clock on the 13th. I normally don't file my stuff electronically because there's no place for a representative or agent to specify he's representing the party. The electronic filing is basically for the homeowner. So there's electronic filing on the back, and you'll see there's a control number and another number that you have to enter that are on your assessment notice. But this has to happen before close of business on February 13th. So you want to make if I'm mailing on February 13th, I'm actually standing. Someone is standing at the counter asking the kind postal employee to date stamp the envelope while we watch. So that way, to cancel the stamp so we can prove it. Is there any chance with an appeal that they would, okay, we're going to see, okay. Is there any chance with an appeal that they would increase your home's value? They are precluded on a residential property from increasing a property's value from any data discovered in an appeal this year. Okay, so that means if you come and you say, yeah, the walls in my house, I've retrofitted them for gold. Okay, so I live in a gold mansion. Theoretically, they can't increase the value of that property for 3 years. But 3 years from now, if you tell them that you live in a gold mansion, they will increase the value. Normally, they don't. Normally, well, if you had gold walls, they might. But normally, they do not. They can't increase residential. So the chance that you're not going to get your residential increased. That's a factor of the Taxpayers Bill of Rights, and I'll send that to Joe, Mr. Perry, because Taxpayers Bill of Rights says they can't increase it. Oh, okay. All right. Is there any chance I answered that? Okay. My assessment says the square footage of my unit is larger than it actually is. Is that likely to factor into an accurate assessment, or is that number not actually used in value calculation? Okay, so here's my answer to that. They normally utilize a cost approach to value. So clearly, what they're doing is they're taking the square footage of your property, they're multiplying it by what they think it costs to build, the cost per foot, and they're coming up with a number. All right. The other side of that coin is what they're also doing is they're looking to see what one bedroom frames sell for. Okay. So some cynical people think, and I've never met this guy, but some cynical people think what they actually do is they go look and see what all one bedroom frames sell for. And then they say, okay, one bedroom frames are worth, I don't know, 290, 180. I don't know what a one bedroom frame's worth anymore. But and then they kind of back into that number using the cost approach. Now, the assessor will tell me I'm wrong, and they use the cost approach and they use the market approach. But here's what I would do. It would work. It would work in your favor. It may work in your favor. Okay. So if I was, but here's one of the problems, and you should remember this too. A lot of the assessors, all the assessors' calculations are exterior calculations. Okay. You can't be measuring the inside of your units. The square footage is based on the exterior calculation. All right. So keep that in mind as you go down that road. All right. So let's see. I have done that one. All right. My appeal, some people have jumped right on it. My appeal hearing date is 2/3/25, but I haven't received the data I requested. Do they have to provide that? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, no. Well, okay, two things. I'm sorry. Let me read the full question. My appeal hearing date is 2/3/25, but I haven't received their appeal data I requested. Do they have to provide that prior to my first hearing? Sure. You don't want to have your first hearing without looking at that data. So, you might want to call them up on the second or on the first. You're entitled to, by the way, you're entitled to one continuance. Okay. You're entitled to one continuance by right. And I would say, frankly, if they hadn't sent you the data by the hearing date, you should call them up. You should tell them, I don't want to go forward till I get my data. And this continuance shouldn't be counted against me because you have not sent that data to me. Okay. So I think you've got a right there just to say, hey, I'm not going to have my hearing till I look at what you guys have on my property. And I'm not going to use my one continuance if you guys haven't done your job. Also, are the criteria based on the previous 6 months within 5 miles of my subject property? You know, I got to say, the co-op is such a unique property. It's just no co-ops in Prince George's County. I think it might be another one down in Capitol Heights, but there's really no co-ops here. I secretly would tell you it's not 5 miles of your house. It's in the co-op. That to me would be the neighborhood if I was looking at sales. Now, if you think you can find something that sells for less, like a condo in I can't remember there. It's on Kenilworth Avenue, big condo development on the other side of Greenbelt Park. But if you think you can find something there to use there as a comp, yeah, you might be able to use that as a comp. But and there are no hard and fast rules as to when and where a comp can be used. The state says this and the state says that. The law doesn't say anything. The closer to the date of finality, the stronger your sale. The closer you are to January 1st, 2025, the stronger your comparable. Okay, answer that. When, how do we ask for the assessor's worksheet? Is it with the appeal we postmark? Yes, I believe so. Normally, I write a letter and get it. But I believe the assessment notice and the appeal process electronically gives you the opportunity to get the worksheet and the sales analysis electronically. And since I don't use the electronic format, I can't specify how. but I believe you can automatically get those two things. I think there's a box you have to check or something, but you are entitled to those two things. And as I read the notice, you might get them automatically. I'd have to take a look. Because again, when I do it, I put together a large filing and I write a cover letter asking for that data and all information utilized to value this property. Okay. All right. If I apply my assessment tax, would an assessor come to my unit and assess my appeal? I'm not quite sure what that means. If that question is, can you ask for a personal inspection? The answer is yes. If the question is, do you think will the assessor just come out if I appeal the assessment? The answer is probably no. Okay, more than likely no, unless you tell him your walls are made of gold, and then he might want to come out and see if your walls are made of gold. But it would be unlikely if you're just arguing that one bedroom frames are worth X, and you've looked at these three comps that support X as a value, be unlikely, I believe, he would come out to your unit. He more likely would take another look at what one bedroom frames are worth. Anonymous attendee, appeal my assessment. Okay. What about if your property was purchased without any AC? Okay, that's a perfect example. I mean, what you want to do there is if your property is purchased without any AC, uh, you kind of want to say, don't compare me with one bedroom frames with AC. That's not comparable. People aren't going to pay for my unit if I don't have AC. What other units with AC go for? So that's just the kind of thing that you want to say, and you want to say, and I think, put in AC would cost me 10 grand or something like that, and I should get a discount because nobody's going to buy my unit if it doesn't have AC. Right. Okay, here. People are doing my job here, so I'm ashamed. It says the notice says that the charge for worksheets on other properties is $1. Okay, I thought due to the pressures of inflation, it might have been increased, but thank you out there, anonymous attendee, who said that, who didn't shame me out by giving their name. So you can get the spreadsheets, the worksheets on your neighbor's property for $1. Leonard Wallace, sorry, Mr. Wallace, outside the co-op. I really think you don't go outside the co-op if you can avoid it. You got to make that decision. First of all, I'd focus on the co-op. Okay, if I couldn't find anything on the co-op, I'd focus on whatever I could find in Greenbelt. Like I say, that name of that big condo, high-rise development down Kenilworth escapes me. I might look in there. But the co-op is so unique that it's difficult. And I would not be wed to time limitations. I mean, don't think you have to be within the last 6 months. The state has data for the last 3 years. They looked at sales in 22, 23, and 24 when they valued your property. So you feel free to look at sales in 22, 23, and 24. Like I said, the strongest comparable is in 24, close to the data finality of 1/1/25, but it doesn't mean you can't look at other comps. That's what I'm saying. All right. Okay, here's a question. If we applied for the homestead tax credit just recently after receiving the tax assessment, I assume it is not too late for the application. Do I need to follow up on the application? Okay, my understanding of the homestead tax credit is you have to live in the property 1 year before you qualify for the homestead tax credit. And there is on the State Department of Assessments and Taxation website a mechanism, I believe, for checking on the status of your homestead tax credit. Or you can just call the assessment office and say, listen, we applied for the homestead tax credit in X, in March of 23. Have we gotten the homestead tax credit? When will we get the homestead tax credit? Okay. All right. Well, I believe I have answered everyone's questions. I appreciate let me make sure I got everybody's. Yeah. I appreciate everybody tuning in today and going along via Zoom with me. Best of luck on your property tax assessment appeals. If you have any questions, I think Joe Perry will probably be the best when it comes to the co-op, or whoever Joe designates as somebody his contact there, for follow-up information. And like I say, pleasure to talk to everybody at the co-op, and hope to see you soon. So thank you very much. Have a great day.